Now, from CBS 4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Good morning, I'm Jim DeFede, and welcome to Facing South Florida. For months, we've been telling you about the Homestead Detention Center, where thousands of children have been held. The target of daily protests, Amnesty International recently claimed Homestead violated international norms for how child refugees should be treated. Members of Congress have called for the center to be shut down, while presidential candidates have journeyed to the site and stood on ladders so they could peer over the camp's chain-link fence. The only for-profit center in the country, the operators collect $755 a day for each kid taken there. But missing from the debate has been the voice of the children themselves. Today, however, all of that changes, as you will hear for the first time from a teenage girl who spent 82 days there. We've changed her name for her family's safety, so we're calling her Sofia. For 82 days, Sofia would wake up each morning and for just a moment, forget where she was. And then it would hit her.
Me daba cuenta que estaba en un lugar en el que hay veces sentía que ellos no sentían el dolor de nosotros.
Sofia is one of the 13,000 plus children dispatched to the Homestead Detention Center since it reopened in 2017. Some stay just a few weeks, others for months on end.
Porque por una parte era bonito y todo, pero también uno necesita el calor de su familia.
The 17-year-old traveled from Honduras to the United States with her older sister and her sister's children. But after being apprehended by federal agents at the Texas border, Sofia was separated from her sister.
Pues sí fue bastante difícil porque no me dejaban hablar con ella, ni verla, ni nada. Tenía miedo que me regresaran y no con mi hermana, que tal vez mi hermana se quedaba, yo me regresaba, tenía miedo.
On her own for the first time, Sofia spent 4 days in an overcrowded cell in Texas before being flown to Homestead. While the Homestead facility was nicer than Texas, Sofia claims some of the workers ridiculed them.
Llegaba un momento en el que las YCs, las que nos cuidaban a nosotros, la mayoría nos tenían asco. Porque decía que nosotros los que veníamos de Honduras éramos unas personas sucias que solo veníamos a ensuciar este lugar. Y eso lo decían algunas YCs y nos hacían sentir mal a varias.
Sofia recalled when one of the workers threatened her friend.
Entonces la YC le dijo repentinamente que si ella creía que los Estados Unidos le iba a recibir de buena manera. Entonces ella le dijo que no, que solo le estaba preguntando. Y la YC le dijo que no, que todos nosotros deberíamos ser reportados por intrusos en este lugar.
Sofia imagined how she would have responded.
Pues yo le diría a esas personas que ellas no pueden hablar, no pueden juzgarnos, porque ellas no saben por qué venimos nosotros, qué es lo que hemos sufrido para llegar hasta acá.
Sofia was born just outside of the city dubbed the murder capital of the world, San Pedro Sula. After her mother died of cancer and her brother was reportedly killed by a neighborhood street gang, Sofia's sister made the decision that they should flee to the United States.
Porque yo sentía que mi vida corría peligro en Honduras.
Did you think you were in danger?
Sí, debido a unas amenazas que llegaban a la casa.
What kind of threats?
Amenazas de muerte.
From Honduras, they traveled through Guatemala to Villahermosa in southern Mexico, where they met a coyote who said he would take them on the 1,200-mile journey to Texas. But instead, the coyote robbed and abandoned them. That's got to be scary.
Sí, bastante, ¿para qué?
They pushed forward anyway, taking a bus nearly 500 miles to Mexico City.
Porque la encontramos en el DF y ellos también venían, entonces ellos nos ayudaron a cruzarla.
When they waded across the Rio Grande, border agents were standing on the banks of the river, waiting to take them into custody. Nevertheless, she said she was relieved the month-long journey was over.
Pensé que ya estaba en el lugar que quería estar y que pronto me iba a superar.
Instead, she was sent to Homestead. After arrival, she was permitted 2 10-minute calls a week with her family and her sister, who had been released and was with a cousin in Texas. Sofia said she often found herself crying at the end of the calls.
Salir directamente donde estaba mi hermana y estar con ella, y no pude.
While some of the workers in Homestead taunted the children, Sofia said others were nice.
No todas ellas eran así. Algunas que sentían el dolor de uno. A una la despidieron por darle un beso en la mejilla a una niña. Y le dijeron que le iban a despedir porque no se podía tener contacto visual con nosotros, ni físicamente ni nada. Y solo por eso la despidieron por ayudar a una niña. Y nadie entendía por qué las cosas ahí eran así.
Kids need comfort and support, Sofia said, especially in Homestead, where you never know when or if you're going to be released.
Es un periodo en el que uno sufre bastante porque uno siente, más cuando lo separan de la familia, uno siente que nadie lo apoya. Porque en el momento que uno sale de su país, a uno le prometen tantas cosas. Y cuando uno llega aquí y se las ve duras, nadie está con uno.
The no-touching ban applied also to the kids. So even though she made friends with the other girls in the detention facility, they weren't allowed to give each other a hug, and they would get yelled at if they broke the rule.
Porque decían que habían demasiadas bacterias y que eso no era permitido porque hay veces uno podía pasarse con tener contacto físicamente con una persona. No le hallaba sentido porque ellos saben que nosotros, bueno, principalmente las amigas, tienden mucho a abrazarse cuando dan buenas noticias o algo por el estilo. Y por eso yo nunca le he sentido porque un abrazo no tiene nada de malo.
The worst day for Sofia came on her 18th birthday.
Bueno, fue un día que no me lo esperaba, que le iba a pasar así. Fue un día horrible para mí.
What happened?
Porque llegaron los de migración y me esposaron para llevarme al otro centro.
As soon as a child turns 18, they are immediately removed from Homestead and sent to an adult ICE detention center. Sofia said as they put the shackles around her ankles, she was scared and embarrassed her friends would see her.
Súper mal porque me sentía como que era una criminal y no había hecho nada. Lloré y ellos me dijeron que no me preocupara, que no era porque era una criminal, sino que porque era por mi seguridad.
On July 8th, 18 days after her transfer to an adult facility, her attorneys were able to arrange her release, and she was placed in the care of an aunt who lives in Miami.
Quiero seguir adelante, ayudar a mi familia y poder estudiar y superarme.
Sofia's asylum claim is working its way through the courts. If she is allowed to stay, she hopes to go to school and someday become a pediatrician. Now I want to broaden the conversation to a larger issue of immigration, and joining me is Christy Ann Padron, an attorney with Catholic Legal Services who represents asylum seekers. Christy, thank you very much for coming in.
Good morning, thank you.
So first thing I want to make clear is that in Sofia's case, she was represented by the attorneys for Americans for Immigrant Justice. And Allison Norris, they do amazing work. They represent all the kids who come through Homestead. So you are not her attorney, and I want to make that perfectly clear at the outset.
No, we work at Catholic Charities. We work with the released unaccompanied minors.
So you do a lot of work with children.
Yes.
So talk to me about the challenges as an attorney of working with children who are coming across the border.
Well, many of them are victims of trauma. Many have gone through really terrible situations at in home country and are running away from those situations. There's a lot of push factors making them leave, and then also many encounter traumatic situations and their journey here. It's not easy on anyone. So when we work, we train a lot of volunteers to take unaccompanied minors cases, and one of the first tips we have them is that the first appointment is just to talk to them and get to know them. And I would say it takes a few meetings and a few times to finally break through and have the level of trust that they can tell you all the things that have happened to them. And sometimes even then, when we do an evaluation with a psychiatrist, is when we realize some of the terrible things that have happened to them.
Some kids or some people tend to think that children can be trained to sort of lie. In your experience, do you think these kids lie about their experiences?
No, it's quite the opposite. I feel like they're honest to a fault sometimes. They're so resilient that sometimes they kind of minimize the things they've gone through because it's so normal to them. So sometimes we have to explain that what they're telling us is actually child abuse, what they suffered, but in their minds that was just the way kids are treated by their fathers, or etc.
Well, that's one of the reactions that people have had to Sofia's story, is that she's somewhat stoic. But I've been told by a number of people that's also a defense mechanism. You sort of inure yourself when you've gone through the things that she's had, her mother dying of cancer, her brother reportedly being killed by street gangs, traveling across Mexico, being robbed by a coyote, you know, all of those things, you sort of put up a wall, don't you?
I mean, we would do that as adults, right? Especially in a situation where there's a camera involved, but imagine how many times she's been asked to tell her story to an attorney, to a judge. I think anyone would develop kind of a thicker skin to try to make it hurt less.
There's a term that we always use, unaccompanied child,
Yes.
right? But unaccompanied can be sort of a misnomer. Unaccompanied just largely means that you're unaccompanied by a parent or a specific guardian that's been assigned to you. So, like for instance, in Sofia's case, she came with a sister, but that she was still considered an unaccompanied minor. Is that something that is more common than we would imagine?
Yes, unaccompanied is a legal definition. They're alone in proceedings. They don't have a guardian that could be the lead respondent in their proceedings, the deportation proceedings against them. So her sister would have her own case, and she would have her own case. So that's why legally she's an unaccompanied child.
What kind of cases are we seeing these days? I mean, is there a certain trend that we're seeing? Obviously, Sofia's from Honduras. We're also seeing kids from and adults from Guatemala and El Salvador. Is that largely what we're seeing now?
In South Florida, we see largely population from Honduras and Guatemala and a smaller population from El Salvador compared to the rest of the United States. And but we've had children from different countries, including even Vietnam, Haiti, Venezuelan kids and Cuban kids now too.
Now, one of the things that's interesting is the Trump administration has recently decided to sort of change the asylum process and makes it so that children coming from third countries, in other words, if a child from Honduras is traveling through Mexico before reaching the United States, they travel through Guatemala, they travel through Mexico. The Trump administration is now proposing and enforcing the idea that before a child can apply for asylum in the United States, they have to prove that they've asked for asylum, in her case it would be Guatemala and Mexico, before asking for asylum here. It sounds good on paper. Once you leave the country that you're afraid of, the very first country you go to, you ask for asylum. But practically speaking, is that a realistic way to approach this?
Well, I believe that practice has actually been enjoined by the courts right now. There's lawsuits concerning it. I do find it could be problematic, and I think it might be in violation of international law and the treaties we've signed on regarding refugees. I don't know what's going to happen if that happens, but that would just mean that those kids would just get stopped in Guatemala or Mexico, and those countries would have complete control over whether or not they got asylum before they got here. Considering all the stories we've heard of the terrible things that can happen in Guatemala and Mexico on the way here, the control that these narco traffickers have over certain areas, and that they will kidnap kids and extort their families. I'm very concerned that kids trying to seek asylum in those countries may not even get to, and we'll see how it's implemented, but for now it's enjoined for a reason.
We have to take a break now, and we'll be back with more. But up next, our look inside Homestead continues as we bring you an exclusive interview with one of the workers at the detention center. You'll want to hear what this person has to say when we come back.